Why do certain people feel so familiar? Like you've just met them today, but you feel like you've known them for lifetimes. Why are some of our fears so irrational? They seem to not come from a previous experience in this lifetime. They just seem to come out of nowhere. I used to think past lives were probably nonsense. Some hippy-dippy crystal shop type shit. And I wasn't really raised to believe in things that I couldn't see or touch or feel. And then one day I was meditating and I had a very strange experience. And then I started to have some other experiences. And then I got some reading recommendations that changed everything for me. The truth might be that death isn't really the end of our story. It's just kind of an intermission between this thing and the next thing. Your soul sheds the body, but consciousness just continues on. And life just becomes a chapter in a much larger story. If consciousness really survives death, then the question isn't whether life has meaning. It's what did you come here to learn? So maybe the question isn't, is this crazy? And the question is, what are we missing about consciousness? I hope you dare to find out. What did you come here for? What do you need to learn? What do you need to share? And what do you need to experience? In order to grow, in order to show compassion, in order to share your gifts with the world, whatever it may be. This might be your path to actually learning that. Why do certain people feel so familiar? Like you've just met them today, but you feel like you've known them for lifetimes. Why are some of our fears so irrational? They seem to not come from a previous experience in this lifetime. They just seem to come out of nowhere. You just feel so strongly and fearful about something that you can't really explain. And why do some children describe places they've never been with extreme accuracy? Today, we're talking about past lives. I used to think past lives were probably nonsense. Some hippy-dippy crystal shop type shit. And I wasn't really raised to believe in things that I couldn't see or touch or feel. And then one day I was meditating and I had a very strange experience where it wasn't a dream. I wasn't asleep. I was aware of my surroundings even though my eyes were closed. But I was also someplace else. I was experiencing myself as different things, different animals even, but it was so real. I could feel the water on me. I could feel the air, the wind. I could taste. I could touch. I could smell. And suddenly, I felt like I couldn't really explain that. And then I started to have some other experiences. And then I got some reading recommendations that changed everything for me. And now I just get it. Because the truth might be that death isn't really the end of our story. It's just kind of an intermission between this thing and the next thing. We're going to talk about it. So what is a past life? I feel like people joke about that term. They say it in a very non-serious way to describe feelings that are important or things that they can't explain, right? But what is a past life? Well, it is kind of what it sounds like. It's a life that you experienced before this one. But the word before gets complicated quickly, because time may not function in the way that we understand it here on Earth. Humans experience time as past, present, future, but many spiritual traditions, near-death experiences, and people who study consciousness seem to suggest that perhaps time is happening all at once, that everything may exist simultaneously. Your soul may not be moving through time like chapters in a book. It may be experiencing different expressions of itself across dimensions, timelines, and different incarnations all at once. That's why some people can describe past life experiences as very present and very emotionally alive. According to many spiritual traditions, Earth is a school of consciousness, and souls incarnate repeatedly to learn, to evolve, to heal, to create, to experience duality, to understand the good, the bad, the joy, the pain, love, loss, passion, forgiveness, power, ego. Some traditions even believe that souls incarnate as different genders, different races, cultures, social classes even, and possibly even as non-humans over several lifetimes. This is thought to help people understand empathy and a broader understanding of existence. If all of this sounds insane to you, trust me, I get it. I was not raised to hold beliefs like this. I wasn't raised religious, but I wasn't really raised with much of an impression. I was raised, I guess, as more of a realist. Having said that, having a weird meditation experience, like I said, and then I started to explore these things. Hey there, what's up? My name's Ash. I'm a life coach, and I work with people going through big life transitions, spiritual awakenings, and trying to find their purpose. So if any of that sounds like you, you're in the right place. Like this video, subscribe. I put out new videos every week, and I love to help people going through it. Do better day by day. If you're interested in diving deeper and working with me, the link to my website is in the description, and you can book a session there. When you have these experiences in life, there's just this knowing that comes along with them that is hard to shake. It's a knowing that feels so certain, and even to people who are uncertain about literally everything in their life and they can't decide on everything, when they have these experiences, they're like, oh, I know that this happened to me and this was real. It's a very common thread throughout people that have had experiences like this, whether in meditation, whether in hypnotherapy, which we'll get into, whatever altered state of consciousness that kind of led them to this, it doesn't really matter. Usually the experience is very similar in so many ways. They aren't just visual experiences. They feel very embodied, like you are living in that body, in that time and space, in the visual that you're experiencing. It doesn't feel like you're imagining something. It feels like you're remembering something. You have these moments where you're like, is this bullshit I'm making up in my head? And then you say, actually, no, there's no way it could be because X, Y, Z has just happened and I have no way to explain that. That happens all the time. So what got me into this, you might ask? Well, after I had that weird meditation experience where I was actually experiencing myself as different animals in the wild, and it was so visceral and so real, and I've never experienced anything like that before. And again, I could smell the smells, I could taste what I was eating, I could smell the air, I could feel the wind, I could feel the water, I could feel my own warmth. And again, I felt embodied into these creatures. And a friend who's a hypnotherapist, which I was kind of skeptical of hypnotherapy at the time. Like, I thought it was effective I thought hypnotherapy was something you just did for to quit smoking or to revisit like a trauma in this lifetime. I have heard about past lifetimes before, but I didn't really realize that so many people could access these memories from these lifetimes. It wasn't until my therapist actually suggested a book that really changed everything for me. It was called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And it's a very famous book. It was written, I think, in the 80s, and it is still very popular today. And he has devoted his whole life to this. The reason I think this book is important is because he's, I believe, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. And the whole premise of the book, without giving too much away, is that he had a patient who came to him, and she had bad depression and anxiety. She just wasn't getting better, and she had been to so many people, and he said, well, let's do a hypnotic regression to see if there is like some childhood trauma that is holding her back somehow, right? So he takes her into just a regular hypnotic regression, and hypnotic regressions are not particularly controversial. They've been done successfully for a long time. But what happened during that session was the beginning of something that changed both of their lives forever. This woman ended up she was describing her surroundings and what was going on and what she looked like, and it was clearly not present day. And basically, she was in this past lifetime, like in the 1600s or something. It was a very long time ago, and none of it made sense. But she got something out of this. It was like something that happened in this vision, in this dream of her, whatever, under hypnosis, because he didn't believe what she was saying while she was saying it at first. He was just like, well, she seems to be getting something out of this. So he went ahead with it. And she had this past lifetime regression and died in that. She saw her death in that lifetime. And, she seemed a little better. And so they had more sessions. And what ended up happening is that he went from skeptic of this, but doing it to help his client, to full-on believer, and now has devoted his life to this mission. I thought it was really important to read from someone who is from such a clinical background, how they went from skeptic to believer, and things were, through this woman, communications were happening from elsewhere that reached him and were speaking directly to him about details of his life. Again, this was in the 80s. It was not like somebody could look you up on the internet or find a lot of information about you. Things about his personal life were told to him through this woman by something else that he knew that she could not have known and nobody else could have known besides him and his wife. And a number of occurrences like that turned him from skeptic to believer that this must be real. Like, just because he didn't have this exact scientific metrics to measure it didn't make it any less real for him or for her. And that's really the premise for the book. And once you've graduated from Brian Weiss world, you can move on to other more deeper aspects of this and talk about quantum concepts and a whole bunch of other things that do very much apply to this conversation. But baby steps, we're just dealing with the nuts and bolts today. At this point, I've read, I don't know, probably at least 30 books about this topic, relating to this topic. Performed a couple of regressions on myself and others. And I'm going to get certified in it at some point when I find some time to do that, just for fun. But I have done a lot of research on this and the common threads. And one of my gifts is extracting information and finding common threads. The common threads that weave through this topic are things that just seem to prove its credibility over and over and over. One of those things is soul groups and familiar people. Like I said in the beginning, do you ever just meet someone and feel like you've known them forever, even though you're just meeting for sure? Many spiritual traditions describe soul groups. They are people that have traveled with you from lifetime to lifetime, usually in some form or another. Your parent may have been your child in a previous lifetime. You and your current partner may have been together in a past lifetime. But perhaps even as opposite genders, like you were, the opposite gender in that lifetime and they were too. Things like that happen all the time. A lover may return as a sibling, rival in a previous lifetime, maybe one of your greatest teachers in this lifetime. These relationships that come into your life with people who may have been there from a past life, they're usually catalysts for some kind of evolution in you, and in both of you perhaps. Some people enter your life to comfort you, either forever or for a short while. And some people enter for a short time to crack you open and either force you to have some experience that you needed to have, or force you to look at things differently and change everything. So when you're out and about in life and you keep bumping into that person, why does the universe keep putting them there is the question. You need to start asking yourself those questions. I saw this TikTok story not that long ago of this girl that was telling this story about, she had moved all around the country, and in every single place she ended up, since childhood, this was not like a stalker situation, in every single place that she turned up throughout like her whole life, this boy from her childhood just kept ending up in the same place as her. And everybody in the comments was like, girl, the universe has been slapping you in the face that that's your soulmate. Like, when are you guys gonna make it happen? You know what I mean? There are reasons that you keep, and it doesn't have to be a soulmate. It could be that they're a friend. It could be that you guys need each other for something. It could be a million different things. But, oftentimes those synchronicities, those chance encounters that change everything, they weren't chance encounters. They were meant to happen. They were meant to be the bridge to the next thing, the next experience, the next relationship, the next connection to get you where you're going. Let's talk about the concept of karma and how this applies. Karma is often misunderstood. When someone experiences something bad, some people are like, yep, karma. Karma isn't really punishment or cosmic revenge of some sort. It's more like energetic cause and effect. If you have lessons that you keep leaving unresolved, if you're not getting it, they're going to repeat. If you have harmful patterns that you refuse to change, that cycle will continue. Certain themes will just keep popping up until you understand them consciously and you can make a change moving forward. This comes up a lot with abandonment, control, your self-worth, huge one. Giving away your power is a big one. Learning to stand in your power and not give it away to everyone else all the time. That's a huge, huge theme for a lot of people. Learning forgiveness and also learning boundaries. Learning to balance the two is a very difficult karmic lesson that a lot of people are here trying to learn. And here's an important thing about karma that you need to understand. If someone does something pretty negative to you, and you are feeling hurt about it, and you are just waiting for the universe, that revolving door of karma to come back around and whack that person in the ass. Don't wait around expecting that. And I want to tell you why. They may privately, in their own life, in their own time, in their own thoughts, come around to say, you know what, I did a shitty thing to that person and that was really not right. Whether or not they ever reach out to make amends with you or whatever. But the actual cause and effect thing, that may not happen until the next life. So don't wait around and expect, something bad to happen to this other person because they did something shitty to you. First of all, A, it doesn't always work like that, like I said. And B, that's also feeding negative energy into something that was meant to teach you a lesson and help you move on. So the longer you dwell in giving that previous past experience energy like that, negative energy, it's actually going to hold you back. It's an important note about karma that I feel like a lot of people don't really understand. And like I said, it's not cosmic revenge, okay? It doesn't really quite work like that. For example, if somebody did you wrong in this life, you may be in the more advantageous position in the next life. And your job will not be to do to them what they did to you. You understand? The tables can turn in a way that, okay, this person kind of messed this up in this life. But let's turn the tables and see what happens in the next life. If this person can not take that resentment into the next life and then inadvertently kind of make the same mistake the opposite way. And then there's the concept of Dharma, less talked about. That has to do with embodiment. What are you here on earth to do? What's your soul's path? What's your purpose? What's in alignment with you? It's what your soul naturally gravitates towards, where meaning and growth kind of intersect. So to keep it easy to remember, karma is what keeps repeating, and Dharma is what keeps calling you. So what do people encounter when they have these experiences? And I want to be clear, people can have similar experiences under a hypnotic regression. They can also have similar experiences in a near-death experience. They can also have similar experiences in altered states of consciousness through meditation and breath work, and also through psychedelics sometimes, though that is probably not the preferred method for this because it's a little less predictable and psychedelics aren't for everybody. I get that. But a lot of people experience being guided by someone, by something. Sometimes that someone is your higher self. Sometimes that someone is a guide. And the guide could be a family member who's deceased that you know from this lifetime. I've had one where it's a grandfather that I actually never met in this lifetime. He died when my dad was 12, but he's apparently one of my guides. I've seen him, and it took me a minute when I was having this experience. I was like looking at him. I've only ever seen pictures of the man. I never met him, So I was like, who is that? And then I was like, I know him. And I was like, oh, my grandfather, It took a minute, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was him. Sometimes it is something much more etheric, a being of light, or what people describe as some kind of higher dimensional being, a higher dimensional intelligence, if you will. And I know that sounds wacky and out there. Actually, I have a really funny story about this. I was doing a hypnotic regression on myself, and I was doing it through this course that this woman had made. So in this particular live session, everybody did a hypnotic regression, and the mission was to meet one of your spirit guides. And somebody came back from it, and they were like, excuse me, why does my spirit guide look like a giant bug? And the woman was like, oh, I didn't think we were going to have to address aliens today, but here we go. She was uncomfortable because she didn't want to challenge this person's beliefs or anything, I think. But she was like, well, sometimes that happens. And you're probably going to experience that not just once, not just twice, but many times if you continue to do this. So sometimes you might be surprised at what you encounter, but it will be life that is likely very intelligent and can communicate with you. Full disclosure, sometimes that communication is not what you would call verbal in your altered state. Sometimes it can come through that way. Sometimes it is telepathic. You're asking a question in your head and they nod and smile yeah. I asked one of my guides once, is this thing going to work out? And they said, yeah. And I said, is it going to be hard? And they were like, oh, yeah. Like that. They just nodded and smiled, but it was like, oh, yeah. I was like, great. Something to look forward to, you know? These are possibilities. These are patterns across people's experiences. And when we get into other dimensional talk, I think this is where I lose the people who are particularly dogmatic, perhaps grew up really religiously. And I think in this lifetime, we're probably going to understand that there's other life out there, first of all. And second of all, I want you to know that in all of the research that I have done, the concept of God and a creator being comes up all the time. And I want you to know that in all of those times, those other beings all also believe in a creator being and that they were created by that same creator being. So all of the gods of the different religions and spiritual realms and whatever or spiritual practices that people follow, I think it's all the same God, man. I think that's what we're all talking about. And I think that we can integrate our religious beliefs, maybe without every word of every book that have mostly been written and translated and rewritten by human beings. I think if we take the concept and do away with a little bit of the strict scripture stuff, we can all get to the same place and understand a much broader context maybe for our creation and our lives. You don't have to give up God or your religion. You don't have to do any of that. I just want you to know that me talking about this stuff, if it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to be uncomfortable with it. It doesn't mean that God is any less real. It just might mean that God might have other children, and maybe we need to not be so narcissistic and thinking that we're the only ones, Just food for thought. It's all going to be okay, no matter what. Take it or leave it. If it's not for you, it's okay. One of the other big common threads that people who have these experiences, again, whether it's through like a near-death experience, whether it's through hypnotic regression, whether it's through meditation, whatever, an overwhelming sense of love when they are elsewhere. And there's usually a place that is talked about as being very light and almost like an etheric city made of light that they describe as home, that all souls seem to describe as home. And it is a place where people tend to visit during these hypnotic regressions especially, and they actually don't want to leave. They're like, I want to stay here forever. Like, this is my home. We all have a place that is home that is not Earth. And again, telepathic communication is very common. In a near-death experience, often there is what they call a life review, or if you're having a hypnotic regression and you see the in-between phase of when one life ends and before another one begins. There is a whole process that a soul goes through. There's a life review where you discuss the good, bad, and the ugly and the lessons you learned and maybe some of the ones you missed and maybe what's next in your next life. There's a regenerative phase, and then there's a reincarnation phase, if you will. Your soul's probably been here before, is the truth. Along with that overwhelming sense of love, there is a feeling of interconnectedness that people are like, oh, like all of that separateness that I feel on Earth, separateness from other people, from other concepts, from other cultures, other religions, none of that matters because we're all one. Even the most malignant, narcissistic person could have an experience like this and say, oh my gosh, I was thinking about this whole concept, this whole planet, this whole life experience the wrong way. Our differences are not really real in so many ways. What I also find unique is that all of those similarities are the same across different cultures, across different races, different religions. So many people's experiences along this thread are basically the same. At the same time, the experience is subjective to them and what is going on in their life, or the lessons that they have learned or need to learn, or whatever's going on with them. So it's both very similar broadly for everyone, and it's also very subjective. So whatever your soul is going through right now is relevant in those experiences, which to me just lends that much more credibility. Why would people from totally different races, backgrounds, cultures have the same exact dreams or experiences in that altered state? That makes almost zero sense when you think about it. To the validity of this, I think actually children are one of the best places to look. Children are the closest that anyone is to their past life. So babies can't talk yet, but once little kids start talking, if you've got a little toddler right now that starts rattling off about, remember when I was your mom? Sometimes it's just kids being kids, but pay attention, honestly, because there have been cases where children have described their most previous lifetime to the degree where the parent could say, this is really weird that they keep bringing it up. And they've literally looked into it and found an archive from another state where they found that person that they're describing, name, location, occupation, the way they died, all of it is the same. There's a famous case, I have to look up the name of it now, where a young boy was describing being a World War II pilot, and he was shot down with his friend. And basically they were able to find, so that, you know, the person he was in the previous lifetime had already died. The other guy was still alive, and he was able to, this kid, verify details of what happened to these two pilots to the other guy. And it was like really freaky. There are cases like this all over the place. So I don't have an explanation for that. These kids can't read the internet or like look this stuff up in archives. Like, there's just no way. So how would they describe it with such specificity? I don't know. Even to the point where like kids were like, will say, oh yeah, I remember there used to be a factory here and this and that and the other. And the factory was like gone 50 years ago. These are just very compelling patterns that are worth continuing to explore. I think healthy spirituality shouldn't ask you to shut off your critical thinking, but I also don't think we should ignore experiences that we can't find like physical, that we can't really verify with scientific metrics in a lab. Some things just are what they are, even if we can't explain them. And I think to dismiss them because it sounds a little crazy, well, that's going to stifle any sort of progress in understanding our lives or consciousness, because I don't think consciousness is very easily explainable. There's one line I need you to depart with. It's this one. Death is not the end. It's really just the beginning. The phrase death is not the end is actually kind of funny because it applies to a story about altered states of consciousness. Claire White, she's a trans influencer. She was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and she was talking about that she did DMT with some friends during the pandemic sometime. They did it, and she was encountering these other beings, and she asked them, tell me something that will help me prove that this was all real after this. And they said, death is not the end. Death is not the end. They kept saying that, and she was like, what the fuck? Okay. So it ends, like the next morning or whatever, they were going to breakfast or something like that. Her and her friends were going to a restaurant, and they like sat down this one restaurant. Like the vibe kind of sucked. They were like nobody came to take the order. Like, we're getting out of here. So they went to this other restaurant and they sat down, and she looked up and there was a giant placard on the wall that said, death is not the end. And she was like, what the fuck? That is an example of how time works, you know? And it's also, they were giving her a message that mattered, but in a way that would tell her so that she would know. Death is a transition. It's not an annihilation like we're led to believe in so many ways. And until I started learning more about near-death experiences, it was hard for me to believe that. I was borderline an atheist before all this. There's a documentary called, I think it's called Surviving Death on Netflix, and it's a multi-part docuseries of people who have basically died medically and had experiences that they can't explain. This one woman in particular basically was drowned. She was in a kayaking incident in which she got pinned under a waterfall, and she was medically dead for an excessively long amount of time. But in the initial phases of this, she had this experience where she was surrounded by these beings, and they ended up telling her like three things. They said, one, it's not your time and you're going to have to go back. Two, I can't remember what one of the things was, but the third thing was, your son isn't going to make it to 18. And I think he was like 15 or 16 at the time, and he did end up dying right before his 18th birthday. The other thing that they said too was really weird and unexplainable. She had no way to understand how they could have said that to her, how she could have known that in her own mind if this was just some sort of hallucination. Everything they said came true, and the way that she woke up was seemingly medically impossible. But she was sent back. And there were many other experiences in that docuseries that were just truly profound and very unexplainable. Your soul sheds the body, but consciousness just continues on. And life just becomes a chapter in a much larger story. But there is one very important note I want to make about this. The term death is not the end, just the beginning. I think if someone's in a dark place, they might hear that and say, oh great, there's an escape route to all this. In all of my research, the topic of unaliving oneself has come up several times. And it's important for you to know that, like we say, that is not the answer. It isn't the answer. In doing that, spiritually, karmically, you are cutting yourself off from lessons, from experiences that you were supposed to have here. And what usually happens in my research to a soul that has done that is that you end up having to come back to repeat a lot of those experiences over because you cut it short. You didn't get to the ones that were really important. It is a form of spiritual bypassing. And I don't want to shame anyone for having those thoughts. Hey, I've had really dark thoughts like that in my life previously, and I 1000% understand that they're very real, and a way out seems very tempting sometimes, maybe. But spiritually, karmically, in my research, it proves time and time again that it really is not the way out. So if you are in a dark place, just know that it does get better. And there are experiences that we're all supposed to have that either teach us to move or teach us what we need. And whatever's coming is definitely better. There's a lot of good stuff too. Just remember that important lesson when it comes to the death is not the end conversation. I just feel like it gets overlooked a lot, and I wanted to bring it up. How does this help you in everyday life? Well, for one, it helps you understand repeating lessons and patterns in your life in a way that you haven't before. It helps you make sense of intense or failed relationships. It helps you heal irrational fears really well. A lot of times, we have fears left over that are from a previous lifetime. Fears of something that could cause us harm. Fears of like the water, if somebody drowned in a past lifetime, is really common. A friend helped a girl who looked up at through her sunroof, just driving down the freeway, and had a panic attack because she was looking at the light through her sunroof. That's fucking weird, right? She was like, I need help for this. I don't know why that would even happen. So she went to see a hypnotherapist, and he realized that maybe something from a past lifetime was going on. So they did a past lifetime regression, and it turns out she had a previous life as a witch, and her looking up at the sky was the last thing she saw before she got, dangled by a rope. The only way I can say that on here, I think. And then she woke up out of it. She's like, oh, that makes sense now. I'm cured. I'm good to go. You can fast forward some healing in this way, in weird ways. Weird irrational fears you have, they might be from past life. And I know that sounds wackadoo, but shit, if it works, why do you care? Just go try it. And then from a spiritual aspect, it can help you feel more connected to others. It can help you reduce your fear of death, finding a deeper purpose in life. In fact, using those experiences to find your purpose in life is often an avenue that people just totally change their trajectory. And then understanding things that you previously thought of as suffering, as understanding them differently as lessons. And it doesn't mean they weren't painful. It doesn't mean that they didn't suck. It means that they were meant to teach you something. And sometimes having that knowing really helps. And that's another thing. When you have these experiences, there is a knowing that comes along with whatever you're seeing unfold or being said in front of you. You're getting like a lot more context in that in your head, because it's almost like you're re-remembering. You're like, oh, I know, I remember this. I know this. Like, I know also these other things that I'm not seeing right now about this lifetime. You seem to, it's hard to describe unless you're experiencing it, but you seem to have this knowing about the general gist of what's going on, not just in this scene that you're kind of seeing unfold, but the whole lifetime that you were talking about, that you're in, rather. So going back to how do you access these states of mind? You can do a hypnotic regression on yourself. You can go see a professional to do it. I think you get better results with a professional just because there's a whole like intake phase where they kind of assess what you really want out of it and help build up your openness to the experience. Honestly, as long as you're open to the experience and not totally judgmental of it, it will really help you actually have an experience. The more closed off you are, the more negative you are about this is never going to work. Like, I'm never going to be able to do this. You don't have to be an expert in anything to do this. You don't have to really have experience doing it. If you can just be relaxed and open, it's probably like the two biggest things you can do. And I like really open-ended when you're like looking for specific answers. Maybe there's like, okay, I really want to find my purpose. I really have this health thing that I need to figure out. I really need to understand this relationship and what happened with it. Whatever, what do I need to know about this relationship in my life? And then I like a good open-ended, like, what do I need to know right now? I get some of the most profound answers when I ask like the just open-ended, what do I need to know right now? What's most important for me to understand? When you go into things with specific intentions, you can get specific answers. Hypnotherapy is probably the most structured and easy to track where you're at and where you're going. Meditation can be sporadic, some meditations you're just trying to clear your head and struggling to do it. Other meditations, all of a sudden you're on a wild ride through the cosmos. You're like, how the fuck did I get here? You just astral projected, Meditation can be less predictable for a lot of people. It really depends on the person. It can be unpredictable for me. Breathwork can be really strong. There are, I forget what it's called exactly, but people have like nicknamed it like DMT breathwork. You can do like some intense breathing to like really alter your state of mind. And I've done a couple of them. They're pretty interesting. Definitely I was on the verge of having some experiences when I did that. And then, of course, there's the psychedelics route. Again, important for integrating and understanding trauma, life lessons, things like that. As far as getting to a previous lifetime, that's not always where you go on psychedelic trips. The trip teaches you what it needs to teach you. And actually, shamans tend to say that if you see like a bright, cute, funny, fun experience over here, just looks like a little party, and then you see like the dark, scary thing over here, go to the dark and scary thing because that's where your transformation lies. The bright, sunny, happy little trip is just for fun. The other thing is for your transformation. Psychedelics are the hardest path to anything because I think the hardest part about psychedelics is that you have to give up control of your thoughts, of what's going to happen next, of what you're going to see. You have to give up control of that. And that's the hardest thing about dipping into psychedelics. So probably not my recommended route for people who are trying to actually have like a past life regression. I really think doing hypnosis recordings yourself or doing it with a professional or a friend who knows how to do it is really great. I don't really think you need to be clinically trained to do this successfully, but a lot of people do get trained, and that's okay. So if you're looking for a way to explore your consciousness more, if you're just curious, want to dip your toe in the pond, if you are really looking to learn what you need to learn out of this life and get to the next steps and in your health, in your business, in your life purpose, in your relationships, in how you feel about yourself as a person, I highly, highly, highly recommend doing a past life regression or even a present life regression, honestly. Exploring hypnotherapy is a life changer for so many people. And again, if you're open to it, if you're calm, if you're open to it, you'll probably get somewhere with it. If not on the first try, you will get somewhere with it pretty quick. You don't need to be experienced to get somewhere with it. Don't be afraid to be curious, and don't be afraid to explore your consciousness. It's probably one of the best things you can do to better understand yourself as a person and live a fuller life. I could not be more serious when I say that. Maybe your soul is far older than your name, your job, your title, your current struggles, or this life. Maybe life isn't the beginning of a story, but just a continuation of it. If consciousness really survives death, then the question isn't whether life has meaning. It's what did you come here to learn? Whether you believe in this literally, symbolically, or not at all. One thing is for certain. So many people across races, cultures, religions, different parts of the world are having these eerily similar experiences. So maybe the question isn't, is this crazy? The question is, what are we missing about consciousness? So I hope you dare to find out. What did you come here for? What do you need to learn? What do you need to share? And what do you need to experience in order to grow, in order to show compassion, in order to share your gifts with the world, whatever it may be? This might be your path to actually learning that. So stay open, be a little experimental, and if you dare, try hypnotherapy. We can't resist learning more about consciousness. It will be the thing that holds us back. So dare to try. Till next time, peace.